Naptown Tuner here. This is my work car. Got all the seats removed in it. Throw my tool bags in here and whatnot. Time for rear brakes. So we're gonna do a video trying to see if I can do it the makeshift way. Brakes are probably about 1 millimeter. Very thin. And yeah, I'm a cheapskate, so I'm just gonna pad slap it. But the thing is, these are electronic parking brakes. This is right here is my air chuck for the airbag, but these are electronic parking brakes. This caliper right here is gonna be what we're testing first. And you can see this one is in really bad shape compared to this one. And sometimes what you'll find is these housings crack. You see the bolts cracked the housing on there whenever I tried to take that loose, and this one wouldn't even come loose. So here's the deal. Some people put 12 volts. I got a battery right here. I would not suggest using your drill batteries because first off, my stuff all has warranties on them still. So I'm not gonna void my warranty by using my battery for other stuff. I don't know if they can tell about that or not, but I'm not gonna take my chances. I'll only take my chances if my battery is outside of warranty. And these batteries, depending on the size, are 1 to 3 year warranty. The 6 amp hour for the 12 volt is a 3-year warranty as far as I know. Some people are not gonna have an extra parts car like me, and they're not gonna be able to chop a pigtail off to do this with. In that case, you're gonna have to get creative with something like this. Yeah, my hands are dirty. I would not use this one right here that's open. I would use this one right here that has the covering insulator on it. And whenever you take this off, you gotta push in and pull out. That's why I brought it, so we can get a better view. You're gonna see a couple of what do you call those? Flat terminals, spade terminals? I don't know exactly what you call them. You tell me in the comments what they're called. They're flat terminals that this deal right here can go on. I don't really need to put both of them on. I can just put one of them on, and it would be a little bit tricky to fit it down in there. But right there, see that? So now you can put ground on one side, and here's the other deal. A scan tool. I can do this with a scan tool. I've never tried this before with hooking up 12 volts to the caliper. We're gonna try it on this caliper first and see what happens, but I'm not gonna go so far as to not use my power probe, because here's the deal. When you got something fancy like this, it's like your right arm. You're gonna use it all the time, and I highly recommend everyone, even amateur mechanics, get themselves a power probe. Very handy for all kinds of 12 volt accessories, and it's got a little circuit breaker on it. We'll do power probe video some other time. You can add power, you can test, it's got a voltmeter on it. Very handy. So I kind of think reversing it would be reversing the terminals. So I'm going to put the ground on the red and the power on the brown, and hopefully this motor spins around. So I'm just going to put it like this, and then there we go. So it did work, I heard it. So let's just go all the way in. I gotta hold this here. For my pry bar, I'm just gonna use a flat blade screwdriver. All right, that worked. Now it's not all the way in, but what happened was, so the ground side is the flat side. What I assumed was correct. To reverse it, to push the caliper in, you want to put the ground on the power and the power on the ground. So now that I got a better view here, I'm just going to see, it shows me it's ground, and then I'm just going to flip the switch to get power. Let's turn this beeper off, turn the beeper off so you can hear better. And before I go any more, let's see how much. So that's how this one works. This one works just by pushing the piston in after it screws in. Some of them, you have to physically screw it in, because that's how the rear brakes work. That's not how these electronic parking brakes on this specific car work. I think I probably have enough, but I could go a little bit more. So Let's just see if it sounds like it stops after a minute. There we go. You hear it change noise. You could hear it kind of bottom out. That was like an action movie. My screwdriver slipped out. All right, anyway, that's fully compressed. Now I'm just gonna take these 13 millimeters out, pad slap it, put it back together. I'm gonna do that on both sides. And hopefully the car figures itself out without the computer scan tool. Other people have done it before me, so apparently it works. So here's how I prefer to bust these slide pins loose. I put my small 6-inch Knipex on this right here because a lot of times a wrench won't fit on this inside nut, and then I just unscrew it with the old ratchet on the other side, so just like such. And same thing for this bottom. Make sure that your socket fits because a 3/8 drive won't fit on this arm. But if you were to try to just break it loose like this, you see the pin starts spinning. So you have to counter hold that pin like this on the inside, and then you can get it the rest of the way off. And then once these two bolts are off, you can just lift it straight off. With these bolts off, you can just lift it straight off like this. Now we can see how worn these pads are. You're just gonna pull these pads loose. You might not want to use your man mittens in there. You might want to grab a flathead screwdriver and then carefully caress it out like that. And then we were looking pretty thin, and there's some grooves in there. You want to be careful with these little spring clips if you're trying to reuse this hardware like me. You see how those spring clips are? You can bend and break those. You want to make sure that they're still intact, and then see how thin that is. Then you want to pop these out right here. You want to grease up those pins before you put those back in. Make sure that they're all the way fitted. Go back and forth with them, both sides. And ultimately, if you want to change the pads and rotors, you just have to get that set screw out. And then there's a couple, I can't remember what size, a couple bolts on the back side there. You just got to get those loose with a standard, probably 3/8 ratchet. You know. We're just going to pad slap this and put it back together. I could have gone a little bit more with that piston. Let me show you that compression tool like I told you I would. Most of the time these pistons have a hole in them, so you want to put your old pad right back in place before you compress this, and then this will be your compression tool. We're going to thumb it in. Hopefully it pushes the piston in a little bit more, and it does. Not that I need to push the piston in all the way because I'm putting used brake pads on my own car. Look, I've got some parts cars. I might as well make use of the parts. These little spring tabs are kind of finicky. See how it's a little finicky to get these things in here? You want to make sure that they're still all intact and in the right place. There's this little tiny lip. I pulled this one out a little bit so you can see better. There's this little tiny lip on the edge of it. The pad has to rest on the inside of that lip. Otherwise this spring clip is useless because it pulls in as the pad wears down. So we're gonna get our brand used pad, and it really doesn't matter if you start the bottom first or the top first, whichever one you have a better view on. I'm gonna start the top first, and I'm just gonna stick it right in its channel like that. And then I have to, once this is fully seated inside of its channel, the ear right there, make sure that it's inside that tang. Then this bottom right here, if you can see, we're gonna make sure that this ear goes behind this ball part. So if you're using your old hardware, you might have to pull it out a little bit because it got pushed in from the wear. So now that I pushed that out, that little spring clip, see how it's out there? Now I'm not going to damage it whenever I push it in. So put this ear back in right here. Now see how it fits behind there? Now I can push it down and in, and I didn't bend either one of those in the wrong area to where all of these tabs are still sprung like they're supposed to be. And you should feel a little bit of spring load, like when you hit these pads. They should feel like they kind of want to bounce back a little bit. So if you're using your same hardware, which I usually suggest, buy new hardware, get new hardware with your pads. Make sure if your new pads don't come with hardware, then get a different set of pads that come with hardware. But if they don't, you can reset the spring tension on these old anti-rattle clips, or what would you call these, shims, brake shims. If you replace them, take them out, use a wire brush in between here with the, sometimes it's easier to just thumb the bolts back in right here with the rotor off, and then wire brush through the whole thing, both sides, or you can lay it on your leg like I normally do and brush them. I already said to get these caliper slide pins greased up. Then I'm not going to put a rotor on this time. We're just going to slide this caliper back on like such, and then bolt it back up and plug it back in. Like I said, if this is what you got, we'll show you how to do this right here. Based on what I'm seeing on this connector, the red wire should be power, and that's this semicircle, the round side of the connector, and the flat side of the connector is the brown wire, so that's ground. So it's going to be easier for me to hook up the ground on the blade with this alligator clip, and then I put my connector on the power side. So now this is ground, it's hooked up because I got a battery right here, and then this is power. Now I don't know which way is which anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I might have to flip them around because one way is going to be out and the other way is going to be in. So I'm going to hit the switch on this power probe and see what happens. Absolutely nothing. Was the ground connected? Let's go ahead and just pull the sheathing back and get a real good ground here. So you gotta get the ground all the way on that terminal. Now let's try it. Even if I touch this and hook, see that's ground, it'll tell me. If I hold it there steady, even if I touch it and put power on it, it'll just blow this circuit breaker. It won't really mess anything up. I just reset it. That's what a circuit breaker does. So now let's try. See if I can get nothing. Am I all the way in there? Maybe this caliper is shot. It's a possibility. So this does work. Apparently I was not recording, but I just pushed this piston all the way in. So now with my pigtail fits absolutely perfect. So what I tried to show you with these deals, I wasn't really getting a good enough connection, or my power probe wasn't fitting all the way in there. So what you would have had to do was just crimp a wire on there like this. So as long as this piece right here is tight enough to fit on the blade, which you'd probably need to use the red ones. I didn't go to all that extent because look, I got the pigtail. So I just wanted to prove that it worked. So now I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to put the ground on the ground side and then the positive on the positive side, and we'll watch this thing push itself out. I already moved it in, so here in a minute it's gonna start pushing out. There we go. Pushed it all the way out. Now that's probably a problem. Look at that. Oops. That's an EPA violation. That was an accident, so I didn't know that the fluid was going to pop out like that. I had to hurry up and take my shovel and shovel out that tiny bit of gravel and throw it in the dumpster. Good thing I acted fast. So let that be a lesson. Obviously, you don't want to take the caliper all the way off and do that by hand and extend the piston all the way out, because that would be very tricky to put back in. And I might try it, but I can't try it on this caliper because it's already broken with the back housing, and you might have to take the back housing off to put that piston back in. You're going to have to pull the lip open. It's a mess. You don't want to do that mistake that I just showed you. You want to make sure that you release the piston while it's still bolted onto the vehicle, bolted onto the caliper bridge. Then you just change the brakes like you would normally change the brakes. So I don't think you need me to show that. I've shown other rear brakes before. Subscribe to Neptown Tuner.